In the early 1970s, television audiences were introduced to one of the most iconic crime dramas of all time, Kojak. Premiering in 1973, this police procedural, set in New York City, captured the imagination of viewers with its tough, street-smart protagonist, Detective Theo Kojak, portrayed by the unforgettable Telly Savalas. With his signature bald head, lollipop in hand, and unapologetically tough demeanor, Kojak quickly became a cultural symbol of law enforcement, blending charisma with moral complexity. Over the course of its 6 seasons, the show captured the mood of the time and established a legacy that would influence crime dramas for decades. In this deep dive, we explore the themes, characters, and standout moments that made Kojak a defining series of its era. At the heart of Kojak was Telly Savalas, whose portrayal of the eponymous character made him a household name. Savalas, known for his sharp features, intense gaze, and trademark bald head, brought a rawness and authenticity to the role of Detective Theo Kojak. Unlike the clean-cut, righteous figures typically portrayed in police dramas of the time, Kojak was complex, morally ambiguous, and often willing to bend the rules to achieve justice. Kojak wasn't your average TV cop. He wasn't immune to the pressures of his environment, nor was he averse to using unorthodox methods to solve cases. His moral compass often leaned more toward pragmatism than idealism. This made him relatable to the working-class audience of New York, especially at a time when the city was grappling with crime, corruption, and civil unrest. His character wasn't about perfection. It was about survival, justice, and a fierce sense of duty, no matter the cost. The appearance of Kojak, complete with his iconic bald head and lollipop, was unforgettable. In fact, the lollipop quickly became one of the show's most enduring symbols. Kojak's constant sucking on the candy was not just a quirky prop. It reflected his cool, calm, and collected demeanor, which contrasted sharply with the violence and chaos often surrounding him. It also represented a certain level of nonchalance in his approach to life, though underneath the surface, his commitment to justice was unwavering. Kojak's baldness, a feature not often seen in leading men of the time, became a defining characteristic. It was a visual departure from the typical TV hero's hair, making him even more recognizable. The image of a tough, bald, lollipop-sucking detective was something entirely new, and it was this unique combination of visual and behavioral traits that made Kojak stand out in a crowded field of police procedurals. Produced by CBS, Kojak was not just another police procedural, it was a show that revolutionized the genre. The series broke away from the more traditional portrayal of law enforcement seen in earlier cop shows such as Dragnet or Adam 12. While those programs depicted police officers as morally unflawed paragons of justice, Kojak was much more nuanced in its approach. Theo Kojak was a cop who was willing to operate on the fringes of the law to get results. Whether it was using informants, employing questionable tactics, or simply bending the rules in order to bring criminals to justice, Kojak's character was not confined by traditional notions of law enforcement. While his integrity was never in question, he understood that sometimes the pursuit of justice required going beyond the letter of the law. The stories explored in Kojak also set it apart from its contemporaries. Each episode typically began with a seemingly unsolvable case, a missing person, a drug ring, a corrupt politician, and followed Kojak as he worked to unravel the truth, often through sheer tenacity. His investigations were frequently set against the backdrop of New York City, whose gritty streets, neon-lit nights, and towering skyscrapers became as much a character in the show as the detectives themselves. The show didn't shy away from the darker, more difficult issues plaguing New York in the 1970s. From the rampant drug problems to organized crime and systemic corruption, Kojak was a reflection of the city's struggles. It also dealt with the ethical dilemmas facing law enforcement in an urban environment rife with crime and social unrest. The series demonstrated that justice was rarely black and white and often required navigating shades of gray. New York City in the 1970s was a city of contrasts, vibrant yet decaying, exciting yet dangerous, and constantly in flux. The urban setting was as much a part of Kojak as the characters themselves. The city served as the perfect backdrop for the show's gritty tone and morally complex stories. The streets of New York, with their towering buildings, narrow alleys, and graffiti-covered walls, reflected the challenges facing both the police and the city's residents. The city's raw energy was palpable in every scene, from the cramped offices of the precinct to the dark corners of seedy neighborhoods where criminals and addicts lurked. The show's creators took full advantage of the city's atmosphere, capturing both its allure and its underbelly in stunning detail. In many ways, New York was a character in its own right. The city's criminal landscape, its diverse population, and its tense social climate created a backdrop that was rich with drama, conflict, and intrigue. The sprawling metropolis also provided a sense of scale and urgency. There was always something happening just around the corner, and the clock was always ticking for Detective Kojak and his team. While Telly Savalas was undoubtedly the star of the show, Kojak wouldn't have been the same without its supporting cast. The detectives Kojak worked with, such as Detective Crocker, played by Kevin Dobson, and Detective Saperstein, played by George Savalas, provided depth and nuance to the series. They represented the different facets of law enforcement, from the young, idealistic Crocker to the more experienced, but often jaded, Kojak. Crocker was often the character who struggled with the moral complexities of policing, while Kojak served as his mentor, teaching him how to navigate the murky waters of law enforcement. Their dynamic was central to the show, with moments of tension and disagreement, but also deep mutual respect. Kojak's tough love approach to mentoring Crocker became one of the defining aspects of their relationship, and their interactions added both drama and levity to the series. Detective Saperstein, another member of Kojak's team, added yet another layer to the show's portrayal of policing. He was a more cynical character, often questioning the methods and motivations of Kojak and the other detectives. This gave Kojak an added dimension, as it wasn't just about solving crimes, but also about the personal struggles and philosophies of the people doing the work. The diversity within Kojak's team was crucial to the show's success. The characters, with their different personalities and backgrounds, reflected the varied perspectives of the police force, adding realism and depth to the narrative. These relationships also helped humanize the law enforcement officers, making them more relatable and showing that even the toughest cops had their vulnerabilities. One of the standout features of Kojak was its impressive roster of guest stars. The series regularly featured big-name actors, from seasoned veterans like Robert Forster and Bill Macy to rising stars such as Tom Skerritt. These guest appearances added an extra layer of excitement to each episode, whether they were playing criminals, victims, or other key characters. These guest stars helped elevate the show, adding intrigue and unpredictability to each episode. Their presence also helped keep the audience engaged, as they never knew who might show up next. Whether it was a notorious criminal or a victim caught in the web of a larger conspiracy, the guest stars brought their own unique energy to the show, and their performances became an integral part of Kojak's appeal. Of course, no conversation about Kojak would be complete without mentioning some of its iconic moments. Whether it was Kojak's signature catchphrase, "Who loves ya, baby?" or the countless tense confrontations with criminals, the series was packed with memorable scenes. Kojak's relationship with the criminals he faced was often one of mutual respect, even when they were on opposite sides of the law. This moral complexity and the blurred lines between good and evil were key to the show's appeal and were a central theme in many episodes. At the core of Kojak was its exploration of justice and morality. Unlike many of its contemporaries, the show didn't shy away from showing the darker side of the law. Kojak was a man of principles, but he was also a man who understood that sometimes, to achieve justice, the law had to be bent, if not broken. This tension between right and wrong was a central theme of the show, and it gave Kojak's character a moral complexity rarely seen on TV at the time. Kojak's willingness to break the rules for a greater cause made him a compelling figure. While other shows of the era depicted law enforcement as largely black and white, Kojak was far more nuanced. The show tackled issues of police corruption, abuse of power, and the challenge of maintaining integrity within a flawed system. These themes resonated deeply with audiences, particularly in the 1970s, when public trust in law enforcement and government was at a low point. The exploration of these moral dilemmas made Kojak far more than just a typical crime procedural. It was a show that examined the complexities of justice and what it meant to do the right thing in an imperfect world. This willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about the justice system made Kojak stand out, and it paved the way for future crime dramas that explored similar themes. Kojak may have aired for only 6 seasons, but its impact on television was profound. It became a staple of 1970s television, offering a fresh and more realistic take on the police procedural genre. The character of Kojak became synonymous with a tough cop archetype, influencing future TV characters and even real-life law enforcement. His bald look and catchphrase, "Who loves ya, baby," became iconic, instantly recognizable to people of all ages. The series also had an undeniable influence on the portrayal of police officers in popular culture. It helped establish the anti-hero cop figure, someone who wasn't above the law but wasn't always constrained by it either. This blurred line between right and wrong would go on to inspire characters in future TV shows like Starsky and Hutch and Miami Vice. These shows, like Kojak, would present their leads as tough, morally ambiguous characters who navigated a world where the rules were often negotiable. Today, Kojak remains a beloved part of television history. Its bold storytelling, memorable performances, and portrayal of a complex, morally ambiguous lead character make it a standout among 1970s television dramas. While crime procedurals have evolved over the years, Kojak's combination of grit, humor, and heart ensures that it continues to be remembered as one of the genre's greatest achievements. Whether it's Telly Savalas' unforgettable performance, the show's exploration of justice and morality, or the timeless appeal of the tough, bald detective with a lollipop, Kojak holds a special place in the hearts of TV fans. Its legacy as one of the most iconic TV shows of the 1970s is cemented, and its influence on television storytelling can still be felt today. In an era where crime dramas were becoming more sophisticated and nuanced, Kojak set the stage for future television shows that would push the boundaries of what audiences expected from law enforcement narratives. Even decades after its original run, Kojak's impact is still felt, proving that some shows never truly leave us.